Hey, tripzero here, and I wanted to do a quick video on my greenhouse, and the objective is to, I have a whole bunch of videos on it, and I wanted to make one video that was kind of put it all in one place. If you want to know about how I designed it, what the concepts were behind the design, what the goals are of the design, here's the place you got to go. And hopefully I share some information that's useful to other people, and they can use it in their designs. And overall, the hobbyist greenhouse, area will be improved. So let's get rolling. So I call this it's a smart greenhouse. I wanted to but there's a lot of greenhouses out there, and I haven't seen one that quite is like this. So maybe it's the smartest, maybe not. We'll see. Time will tell. If there is a smarter one, I'd like to see it. Maybe I can learn something from it. So the objection, we'll go over the objectives of why, what I wanted to accomplish by building this, some of the construction plans, and then some of the features, and hopefully the features, the construction and features fulfill the objectives. So the basic idea of a greenhouse is it allows you to take control of your environment. For most of us in the world who, in most locations, we have very different types of weather during the year. Some of it is very cold and some of it very warm. And the idea of a greenhouse is you can kind of control that and have warmer temperatures when it's cold, and not always, but sometimes cooler temperatures, at least at night, when it's warm. But my goals specifically were primarily to grow food, which, no duh. But I wanted to grow food in a way that was pretty much effortless. I didn't want to go out there every day and be like weeding all over the place and, spend a lot of effort to grow food. I just wanted, if I need some fresh parsley, I'd love to be able to go out in the garden and just grab some instead of going to the store. And I don't have to spend a lot of effort to go out and water and weed to get that. And I also wanted to be green. If it costs a whole lot of money to run, it's not worth it. So effort, time, and money, that's some of the big things. And I think I can solve those problems, or at least I thought I could solve those problems with technology, as I work in the technology field, and so I thought maybe I could use some of what I know and kind of come up with some solutions that could solve these problems. Onto the grow food. So by far the most effortless system I found for growing food, efficient, is the Mittleider Method. And this is the book that describes kind of what the Mittleider system is. It combines, I would like to describe it as combining traditional gardening with hydroponics. So there's lots of different ways you could describe it. But it uses as much of the science that we know about plants. We think we know exactly what kind of nutrients they need. We know exactly what the purpose of the growing medium or soil is. We know exactly what kind of light they need. We're learning more of the stuff as we go on, but we think we know quite a bit. And I think the Mittleider Method covers those topics, those areas. And it allows, I think, us to grow, those who use the system to grow more food with less effort and at the least cost. It basically combines, I think, three different areas. It's cost effective. So it'll use your existing, it describes you using your existing resources or for soil. If you have really rich soil, go ahead and use that. If you have, maybe you have some tough clay soil, you can still use that. But if you can, so use your existing resources, use the best of your existing resources. If you have really rich soil, there's no need for you to even go out and get cheap inert medium, right? Because you already have good stuff. So use what you have. If not, if you don't have anything great, but you can spend some money, then maybe go get some sawdust and sand mixture as your growing medium and plant in that. So, and then it talks about plant nutrition. It's got a system where you add the nutrients you need to the soil. So you don't have to wait for compost. You don't have to spend a lot of effort composting, doing the I would call it the indirect feeding mechanism or methodology, where you're taking organic matter and you're relying on bacteria to break that down into something that the plants can actually use. So this is very much more direct. You're feeding it with the nutrients directly in plant soluble form, or water soluble, so the plant can uptake it immediately. So there's two parts: the pre-plant, which you apply every 6 weeks right before you plant, or every 6 weeks, as I like to do, and that has your calcium and your manganese and other things that your plants will need, but don't need it necessarily every week. Has a much slower uptake in those trace minerals, boron as well. And then it has the weekly feed, which you give your plants every week. And it's a pretty simple method where I only have to really go out to my garden once a week to apply the weekly feed, and I do a little bit of pruning, and that's about it. The only other time I have to go out to the greenhouse is when I want to actually get some food, which is awesome. And then the third circle I have here in green is how do you grow more food? Well, you use the proper nutrition and you grow vertically if you can. So there's I've got an appendix in the book that gives you spacing, how far to plant each plant apart from each other, and how to grow them up vertically so that you use more vertical space instead of using horizontal space, which is a lot more scarce. And then of course, training plants to grow up is also an important piece. The other objective was to be green, so I couldn't use expensive heating cooling. I wanted to use as efficient heating and cooling as possible, and that, for me, coming from technology, I thought about how do I cool, like, a computer, for example. The most efficient way, what most people do is they have a heatsink and a fan, and the fan slowly siphons away the heat, or sucks away the heat from the system. But if you want to go really efficient, what the gamers and the really hardcore people do, they use water to cool the system, because water is a much better conductor of heat, as I'll show later, and it also can store a lot more energy. And the more water, the better. So in my system, I use a geothermal water system, and I'll show you the plans for that, or kind of a drawing that shows what that is, and it has the same general principle as the computer cooling, or the CPU cooling in a computer, is that it's going to be better than air. But as I learned, more water is better, because just the energy capacity of water is so awesome. For example, so here's some statistics about water. Because of its unique shape, it can vibrate and move, be excited in numerous different ways, and this makes it probably the most, the highest energy capacity of any compound we know of. So it's about 4 times the energy capacity as air. If you have the same mass of water as you do air, the water is going to store 4 times the energy. So that means that at 60 degrees, the molecule of water is going to have 4 times the energy. Or put it another way, if you have 4 molecules of air and 1 molecule of water, that molecule of water will be able to heat up those 4 molecules of air without losing too much energy itself, without dropping in temperature too much. So pretty powerful stuff. It's about 22 times better in its ability to transfer heat than air. And these are the heat capacity or thermal capacity numbers for water and air. It's quite a big difference. So people who actually, in fact, air is such terrible, is absolutely terrible. So bad at transferring or holding on to heat. People who are cooling or heating their systems with air are actually not using air. What's actually warm in the air that we feel is actually other materials other than air. For example, water, or other compounds that are also floating up in the air that we're using. So those are the actual compounds that are holding the heat, a lot more so than the actual air itself. So here's the kind of three drawings that I crudely came up with to describe the system when I was planning it, and then I edited it later on with the changes that I've made to it. So over here on the left-hand side, we have just a 16 by 6 foot area. It's a small greenhouse, long but narrow, and it's got 2 18-inch by 12-foot beds that are about 3 feet apart. So a nice aisle in the middle, and then this area is kind of like component area. I've got as you can see over here, I've got a reservoir over here, and I've got a nice 3 foot by 3 foot shelf or something like that, 3 foot by 2.5 feet shelf that I can put tools on and whatnot. And then over here I have the pump that circulates the water through the system. And so it basically goes like this. It goes from the reservoir, which is 20 gallons, to the pump, through the bed, out of the bed, down into the geothermal. When it goes down in the geothermal, it goes all the way down, and it's got about 4 loops. This is if you were looking at it from the top down, goes like this, goes back and forth, and then it comes up to the second layer, which is about a 1.5 foot above the bottom layer. Does the same thing, goes back and forth, and then it comes back up and returns to the reservoir. So hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions, obviously comment and I'll answer them. All right. So it's about 8 foot tall, the beams anyway. The hoops go a bit further, so it's about 9 feet tall. I tried to keep it under 10 feet because I didn't want to have to get a permit, because those cost money, and I think it's silly to have to ask you know, the person who, or the agency that apparently owns the world, or at least the, this particular spot of the world, permission to build on something that I believe is my property, which is my yard. So I think that's silly, but we'll leave it there. So we're going to go into the features now, and kind of the problems I ran into and how I'm using technology to kind of solve these problems. So in my area, I live in the Northwest, and I get, in the winter months, not very much sunlight. So compared to, for example, Salt Lake City, which isn't even the most, Florida, I believe, will get about 3.07 in December. I'm getting 1. I'm getting half of what Salt Lake City would get in December. And that's just not enough to grow. I can grow herbs and things that don't require full sun, but if I want to grow tomatoes, or onions, which is one of the two of the several plants that my family consumes regularly, no dice. There's no way I could grow with that sunlight. I can have the most, I can have the right temperature and the right nutrients and everything else, but I'm not going to have the sun unless I amend or supplement my sunlight needs, my light needs. So I came up with this. I found some really efficient LED grow lights online, and I put them together in a strip that you can see here on the right. And I made a controller, which is on the left, with a light sensor, which is the thing, you know, right here. And the light sensor will read in the existing light, whatever I'm getting from the sun, and it will modulate the intensity. It'll adjust the intensity of these lights accordingly. So if I'm getting full sun, these are going to be off. And it works really well, as I'll show you here in a sec. Oops, go back one. Yeah, can I erase that? Eraser? This is my first time kind of using this tool. Wipe screen. Okay, perfect. So as you can see, I have them set on a timer, so it'll only come on at sunrise, and so the lights turn up pretty much all the way. And as the day goes on and the sun actually rolls behind the clouds and peeks out into my greenhouse, you'll see the actual light, which is the green one, goes up, and my artificial light will go down. And it works really well. So I've got it calculated where the amount I'm producing artificially, I give my plants just a full day's worth. So I measured the energy output from my artificial lights, and I say, this is how much the plant needs in a day. And anyway, there's some fun math that I did to calculate it. There's actually a blog post that I have on making smart lights even smarter I can link to, that kind of describes the process I went through to make that work. And it's worked out really well. But so I have LEDs are the most efficient lights out there, so I have those. But in my experience, if you look in some of my older videos, I did a lot of outdoor, hiking, backpacking, camping, outdoors sort of thing. I really enjoy that. And one of the things I learned is, if you want, the goal is to, go as far as you can. You can only do that if you're as light as you can. So you really need to be careful about what you're carrying. You want the most efficient kinds of foods that have the most calories per ounce. You want the most efficient gear. And if your gear can double its purpose, like if you have a flashlight that's also, a hammer, or a pocket knife that doubles as an axe, or something like that, that you can use to cut wood, or whatever it is, if it has multiple uses, that is the golden egg. That's what you want to strive for, is find items with double uses. And these LEDs do have double use. They double as a heat source. They do produce some heat. So I had to put these heat sinks on the back to kind of spread the heat so they don't overheat. Obviously, that would be bad. To keep them cooler, and it heats the air around them. That's good because it does, add heat energy to the greenhouse, but it's not the most efficient way of doing it. And for actually very little extra cost, you can, this is what I'm going to end up doing, is water cool them. And if I water cool them, I can actually tap into my geothermal system, and I'm adding the LED light, the heat generated from those LEDs directly into the soil bed. I go way back here. Oh, I think I went too far. Yep, right back here. I'm going to be adding the heat, so to my reservoir, which is going to radiate heat to the greenhouse. It's going to be a heat source. It's going to go right through the soil bed and radiate up directly to my plants. It's going to keep the soil, or the root system, warm. So that's basically the idea. I can take the heat energy and I can put it exactly where I want it. Temperature. This was the other big problem. So geothermal is good, but I would say alone it's not. You can't do it. You need energy input. So the ground soil can be anywhere from 45 to 60. You will lose, you will be sucking energy from your geothermal cache, or store, battery, whatever you want to call it. You will be sucking energy from it, and it has to transfer energy either from above or from the sides, and that takes time. And soil's not a great conductor of heat either. It's actually a very good insulator. Better than air. Not as good at insulating as air, but it's better at transferring and holding on to heat. So I would say it's good, but it's not great. So most of the benefits, I think, of my system come from just using the water. And I could probably show you some math that shows, if you just look up the specific heat of soil versus water, you can see, there's tons, water's the best there is at storing heat. So if you're going to store heat and move it around, water is your cup of tea. So if I were to do it over again, I'd actually probably just bury a huge tank of water under there and then put rocks around it, which I've seen people do, and it's a good idea. I also have an energy input problem. So the energy output is going to be less than or equal to the energy input, and the energy input in my case is solar. So one of the biggest problems is, if you go back to how much light am I getting? Not very much in the wintertime. I don't have a lot of energy input going into my system, and so it gradually just gets cooler and cooler over time, unless the sun comes out, for a couple days and brings it back up. So that's been a pretty big problem. But I can overcome that by either adding more water, but I have to increase my energy input. And and I have to do that by, I'll show you here in a sec. So a little more about the geothermal. So up here on the top is my soil temperatures, and let's go back briefly to the plans. I have one regulated bed that's got the solar, the geothermal water system going through it, and one unregulated bed. And I did that deliberately so that I could have a control and the experiment. So I have temperature sensors in both, and you can see the bed on the top is the unregulated bed, and it heats up really quickly. It also cools down pretty quickly. And the regulated bed, which is the one on the bottom in blue, it's a lot more stable. It goes up stably, doesn't get as hot, and just maintains a lot stabler temperature. And I see this consistently throughout since I've been measuring the system. The regulated bed is just way more stable, temperature stable, and it's because of the water, the geothermal water system. If we look down at the air, we can see this is the same day, by the way, as the one on top. The air temperature inside goes way up, and it gets actually very, very warm. And even if the temperature outside's pretty cool. So I can get up to 40 degrees inside if I can get a decent amount of sun. So I need to use that. I need to take advantage of that. When I do get sun, I need to take advantage of it. And this is one of the ways I did it. So to increase the energy input, I need to increase the surface area that's actually getting direct contact from the sun. If you remember earlier, air sucks. Like, it doesn't hold heat very well. It's hard to, I mean, what is getting heated up in the air isn't actually the air itself. It's like the water in the air and the other compounds in the air. So I need direct, the most efficient way I'm going to capture energy is directly from the sun. So I stuck this solar heater thing, which really, really cheap solar heater, which is a giant, a couple coils of tube that cost, $50. And it goes from my reservoir up here and back down. It goes through these things. So I do take advantage of the air, the warm air that accumulates up here. I've got these heat exchangers that they're actually from CPU systems. They're some of the ones you'd see in a computer that are liquid cooled. I got these from an old Bitcoin miner. So we're using those. I'm taking the hot air that's up here, and I'm pushing them through these radiator heat exchangers, and I'm warming up the water with the hot air. So this has worked actually really well as well. Another way, so I added this after the solar heater, but this has been, it's a lot more expensive, but you get double use, which is awesome. So this is a CO2 generator, but it's a water-cooled CO2 generator. So I get double in the wintertime, I get double the use out of it. First, it burns propane, it generates CO2. So in the wintertime where I'm getting less light, you can compensate with the less light with increasing the CO2. The CO2 is essential for photosynthesis, and the more CO2 you can get up to a certain level, the more photosynthesis can take place with the same amount of light. So perfect in the wintertime, and it heats the water up as the water goes through the system to cool it. The water heats up, and I'm directing that heat right where I want it to go through my geothermal system. But again, it does cost some maintenance, the propane. You have to buy some propane. It's cheaper than an electric cooler, which I also do have in there for emergency purposes, but this has worked also very well. So what I'm working on right now, so I haven't had the system for over a year yet. I just got it. When is it ever finished? Haven't got it finished yet, but I've got the geothermal system working pretty much all winter, and I've been adding I added the solar heater, which helped quite a bit, and I added the CO2 generator, which helped quite a bit. But those things are optimized really for warmth, like capturing the heat and directing it where I want it, so that I can keep my plants happy temperature-wise, heat-wise. But in the summertime, once I start to get some sunlight, it's going to get really hot in there, and I have not optimized the system for cooling at all. So this is what I plan on doing. I have an exhaust fan, which is the one up here on top, and it blows out exactly the amount of air that is in the system. So I have about 800 cubic feet of air in the greenhouse. This will exchange it or exhaust it every minute. And I also have found this guy on eBay, which is a 12 by 15 by 4 inch heat exchanger. And I can attach some fans onto this thing to suck in air, and as I'm sucking air from the outside in, it'll cool the air as it comes across these heat coils. So I can add this to my water system, my geothermal water system, and it'll cool the air as it comes in. And it's got the all the air coming in is exactly what's going out, so I can have a full, flow. I'm probably going to use the exhaust system only in emergency cases where I go over 40 degrees Celsius, which is like 120, 110, 120. So when it gets really hot, I'll exhaust the heat, but I'll probably use this a lot more because I'll be able to control. I'm going to use 120 millimeter CPU fans that are 200 cubic feet per minute fans. So I'll have 6 of them on this thing, and I can control the speed of those much more easily than I can control this guy. So I'll probably have this going a lot more, and then as the intake, just as cooling with the water, and then use this only when I need to. So we'll see how that works. I just installed the door with these in it, and I'll finish installing the panels to kind of close it up, and I'll add the fans to it, which I haven't done yet, and get it all automated with my automation software. And we'll see. Hopefully it works really well. We'll see. Another thing I'm going to do is add more water to the system. So over here on the left is the existing system. I have given to me by a friend 2 more 55-gallon drums. Dig a 2.5 foot hole in between the two. Oops, and go back. In between the 2 beds, and add this to my geothermal system. So link it in, and it'll bump up my water total within the greenhouse to about 155 gallons. Oh, sorry, it adds. That's not correct. It adds 110 and 110. Yeah, plus whatever I have in the reservoir. So yeah, that number's incorrect, but around there, 140 maybe 135 gallons. It'll add 26 gigawatts of energy. So think about that for a second. Gigawatts. That's billions of watts, 26 billion watts of energy to the system. Now that's, at 15 Celsius, and if you were to take it down to absolute zero, so not all of that energy is used, but brings up my total to 33 gigawatts, which is quite a bit. By comparison, so I'll only have, 130 gallons of water in the system. I'll have over 800 cubic feet of air, but that 800 cubic feet of air is only holding 835 megawatts. So 835 million watts of energy at the same temperature as the water. Just think about that's, even just doing really, really rough estimate, that's over 33 times more energy inside the water. So, and then I'll regulate both beds. So seriously, water is way better than air. It's without question. A little bit about the irrigation. So I talked about how I'm doing light, temperature. Water is a hugely important thing as well. So I'm using the Mittleider PVC system. I'm using the same pump as my geothermal system, so I'm getting 2 uses out of it. And all the water in the system's coming from rain, so that doesn't cost me anything. And it's moisture sensor controlled, so I've got a couple of moisture sensors in each bed. And it's learning based, so I have it set right now to a set point. Say it's 50%. If it's, reading 50% humidity in the soil. And it goes below that, then it'll kick on for 30 seconds. Let's say in 30 minutes, it starts watering again because it dropped below. Maybe it's really hot and there's a lot of evaporation going on. Well, my system, my software learns from that and it says, hey, I'm watering too much. Let's increase the duration. Or let's say I go a whole day without watering. Let's lower the moisture set point because we want to water every day, even if it's just to, flush the nutrients through the system, make the nutrients more available to the plants so the plants can use them. We want to water at least once a day, but we don't want to water too often, which I consider less than 30 minutes. So these variables will change depending on the time of year, and we'll see how it works in the summertime when it actually probably will start watering, depending on how warm it gets inside, a lot more. And then it's got 2 independent zones, and then I just finished an additional controller for 3 more zones out in the garden, which you can see in previous videos. I had that all set up, but I'm changing out the controller so I can use it with the greenhouse software will control all the beds on my property instead of just the ones in the greenhouse. So that's what I have. If you have any questions, you can check out the website. You can go to the YouTube channel, leave comments in either one of those, and I'll get back to you. And I hope this was interesting. I hope it was informative. Hope it helps you if you're planning on building a greenhouse, how to make it more efficient, how to make it smarter, and hopefully I would love to see more people using water, because I really think the math and the science behind it is pretty sound, and it's not any more difficult than air to set up. It's a matter of selecting a pump and finding the right adapters to make whatever tube you use work out. And it's the same thing for air, right? Because you have to get a blower instead of a pump. And the only additional thing you have to worry about is maybe a reservoir, which is just a it's just a big barrel. I actually started out with a 7-gallon bucket as my reservoir, and I switched that out because 7 gallons keeps on emptying when I water my plants too quickly. So 20 gallons is where it's at now. All right, I'm feeling tired. It's about 10:12 and my voice is going out. But so yeah, I hope it was informative, and if you have any questions, let me know. Please like and subscribe if you like to see more videos like this, and I'll catch you later. TripZero out.